Hello, and welcome to another Victory video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books. Just got home from work. I got straight in the bath because I just wanted to be warm and cosy and get my makeup off. Got a bit of a spot brewing because the period's on the way. And then I was in the bath and I thought, oh, I was supposed to film my reading wrap up tonight. Hello, baby! She just came out from under the heated air as she loves laying in there. So got in my pyjamas and thought, I'm just going to film it in my pyjamas because I could have waited and filmed it on a day when I had more clothes on, but I thought, no, I'll be cosy. There's cosy vibes here. Before we get into the reading wrap up, 9 books I read this month. Just a little public service announcement to those people who have been kind enough, and I really do mean that, to mention that the red frame around the thumbnail of the videos is confusing to people because it means they can't tell whether or not they've watched the videos or not. That's going after today. So I'm in a way to differentiate my videos at a glance, I'm working my way through the rainbow. So from February that'll be orange, so you'll be able to see a red line from the bottom. But thank you to everybody who messaged, and some people had wrapped up that little bit of feedback in such lovely ways, so thank you so much. But yeah, it's stayed for the whole of January, but from tomorrow, no, not from tomorrow, from February there will be no red box around it. It'll be an orange box. But here we are today talking about the 9 books that I read in the month of January. I'm also, whilst I can and whilst I remember, I'm going to talk about my DNFs as well, because there are 2 DNFs this month, and I think I didn't put this in my reading resolutions, but I think I'm going to embrace the DNF a little bit more, because if I'm not getting on with something, why bother? Because in reality, today's video could have been 11 books long, because I could have persevered with both of those books and finished them in time for this video. But I was just having an awful time with them, so I gave up. So they will come at the end of the video. So if it's DNFs you're here for, you've got to wait till the end. Right, but let's start with the reading month. It's been fine, which is a shame, because last January I read, the top of last year I read some absolute corkers. But this year, nothing has scored higher than a 3.5. 3 to 3.5. It's still, I like it. And a 3.5, it's on its way to, oh, I really liked it. But yeah, nothing's really grabbed me. But here we go. So I started off the year with the book Stolen by Anne Helen Lestadius. I bought this for my birthday, so I've been very much looking forward to it. And I sort of earmarked this as this would be the first book that I read in 2024. It's a book set in the north of Norway, and yeah, just north of the Arctic Circle, and we're following a young girl called Elsa, who her and her family are Sami, which is the indigenous people, one of the oldest indigenous tribes in Scandinavia, and they spend their lives looking after reindeer. And when Elsa is a young girl, 9, she witnesses an act of somebody, she finds the body of one of her reindeer, because she's got her own little reindeer herd, which has been mutilated, and she sees the guy that did it, and then she spends her whole life, because we hear about her a little bit older and then a little bit older than that, living with that on her shoulders, and this guy who has been racist and awful and mistreats animals. And yeah, I found it, it's hard to say all of that because it's heavy stuff, and then say I found it enjoyable, but I did find it enjoyable, and I found it interesting. I learned a lot about an indigenous group of people that I didn't even know existed, which is insane. Yeah, their way of life, and how they in turn love the reindeer, but also see them as a sort of commodity, because that's how they make their living, and they're so concerned about them feeling pain and stuff like that, but at the same time some of the things they have to do towards the reindeers maybe could cause them pain. I found it very, very good, and I enjoyed it, but it hasn't stayed with me as much as I thought it would, which is a shame, because I really thought I would feel more about it later on. When I went into it, I was like, oh yeah, coming of age, yeah, enjoy that. And I think for me, there's trigger warnings for a lot of animal cruelty in here, and I find it hard. There's another book I read later on in the month with animal cruelty in as well, and I find it hard once that's happened, and once I know that that's coming again, I just feel a great sense of dread on my shoulders and around me, and I can't fully let myself go and enjoy it. So yeah, it feels mad to be down marking a book which of course has animal cruelty in, because the story is at the heart about animal cruelty. But yeah, I think it was those parts of it just made me feel a bit doomy about it. But speaking about doom, oh no, the next book I read was literally the worst book I think I've ever read in my entire life, and that was Tackle by Jilly Cooper. Now, I'm not going to show you too much of the cover, because when I put this cover on Instagram, it got taken down, and I got a warning email saying don't put explicit content on your page, otherwise we'll shut you down. This has merely got a 6-pack on it. I've seen all sorts on Instagram, and I was the one getting the emails about this. But yeah, first and last Jilly Cooper. I read it for a new book club that I've set up with my choir. I picked this book thinking it would be a great laugh and we'd all have a good fun with it. But the reality is that it was awful. It was so bad. I'll start with saying I can't believe that this is written by a woman. Like, the characters in here, who are just like the biggest stereotypes you have ever met in your life. And also there's hundreds of characters in here. I started reading it and then I went to the audiobook just because I needed to get through it. There is no less than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 pages of characters. And none of those characters, apart from the main character, has much more of a personality than this little finger you're looking at right now. There is so many tropes in here, so many, like I said, stereotypes. Everyone had insane names and like disrespectful and awful names. For example, someone was called Lou Easy because she liked having sex with people. All of there was loads of animals in here as well. So it's the guy that we're following, Rupert. He is into his racing and he's just bought a football team. And there's loads of like horses and mascots and dogs, and they've all got insane names as well. And a lot of the time I was like, is this person they're talking about an animal or a dog? I just don't know. The women within this book ranged from being literally the stupidest, like a dumb bitch basically, who just liked getting their hair cut and just awful, to Rupert's wife, who was called Taggy, who was like this sort of like untouchable saint-like figure who was, you guessed it, going through chemotherapy and like just so concerned about how she looks and how she's not being a good enough wife to Rupert and all of this sort of stuff. The daughter in it was awful, so their daughter was awful. There's some awful stuff in there about adoption and about gay relationships. I just shocked. Like, if this is what Jilly Cooper is, then my god, am I glad I haven't read any before now, because I won't be reading it again. It was just so disappointing, and yeah, we had a great time talking about it though, because no one enjoyed it. It was just, yeah, literally the worst thing I've ever read. Like, the worst thing I think I've ever read. So bad. I'm even reluctant to put it in the community library because it was so bloody bad. Next up was an audiobook, which was better. The top scoring book of the month, which was So Late in the Day by Claire Keegan. I have read Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan, and very much enjoyed it. Oh, Debbie just fell down from the sofa. She was trying to climb up. And I've got a reservation on Foster. I'm number 8 in the queue, so it must be very, very popular. And I also own Antarctica, which is a short story collection of Claire's. What amazes me about Claire Keegan, and so this book here is 50 minutes long. I listened to the audiobook of it. I listened to it on the way home from work in one sitting. Because I was sat, because I was driving. And the amount of plot and character development she manages to put into this small amount of time for me, but pages for people who have read it physically, and how much sort of I feel for those people is, I'll be honest, like astounding. It's like magic. It was amazing. So in this, we're following a relationship, the beginning, middle and end of a relationship between an Irish man and a French woman. And I obviously can't go into much detail because it's only 50 minutes long, and if I tell you anything to do with the plot, that's a big chunk of plot. But yeah, it was literally like she had weaved magic into these amazing short stories. I'm so excited to read her into these novellas. I'm so excited to read the short story collection because I don't often look forward to a short story collection, but knowing I've read 2 of her novellas and they've delivered amazingly, I feel like maybe this might be the short story collection for me. So I'm looking forward to reading that. That was on the plan to read this month, but I've got 30 library books out at the moment, guys, so I better be cracking on with those. But yeah, thought this was great, 3.5 stars. Next up was Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. David bought me this for Christmas, isn't he cute? He bought this for me because it was the beginning of the series. I'm not going to carry on with the series. I found this fine, I gave it 2.5 stars. And it is a sort of magical realism story about a coffee shop where if people sit in a particular... This is where I had the issues. Particular seat and do a particular thing, they can travel back in time to the very same coffee shop, and we follow 4 people doing that. Now, there is a lot of rules involved. I've just alluded to 2 of them in this travelling back to the coffee shop, and because of that, and because there's 4 people who are doing that, there is a lot of repetition in this book because they go over the rules constantly to every new person, and then even the discussions within themselves, they're talking about the rules. So a lot of repetition. I did enjoy the sort of like the little bits of going back, but I wouldn't say that I feel like I would have enjoyed this more without the time travel in it. I enjoyed the backstories, and like the time travel didn't really add much to it for me, and I could have done with all the repetition and all the rules all the time. But yeah, it was fine. I think it was maybe a little bit too gentle for me. I'm not much of a gentle book reader. I like sort of something to happen, but yeah, I won't be carrying on. And actually, when I reviewed this, a lot of people messaged me afterwards to say, oh, when I reviewed this on Instagram, a lot of people said, oh, it gets even more repetitive as the series goes on. So I think there's 4 in the series now. Yeah, this is Before the Coffee Gets Cold, then Tales from the Cafe, Before Your Memory Fades, and Before We Say Goodbye. But yeah, I think it's charming and twee, and I think there'll be a lot of people that will really enjoy this, but like I said, it was just a little bit too gentle for me. Next up was a library book, Finding Me by Viola Davis. This was Viola Davis's memoir. Again, this is going to be tough to say that I enjoyed this book because I didn't realise what poverty and Viola had lived with, like, as a child and into her sort of like early adulthood, and the sexual assault and abuse that she was at the hands of, and the abuse between her mother and father that she witnessed. So yeah, it's very, very heavy in terms of like trigger warnings for sexual assault, poverty, violence and abuse. Like it's you honestly, at some points it's like you just feel like you're not turning a page without something awful happening again. But what I loved about hearing about that was her love for her craft, which is acting. And although we don't tend to hear about that until a bit later, and it's not even, I think she wrote it in 2021, so it's not like sort of bang up to date, but she doesn't really like go into detail about any of the particular movies and stuff that I'm familiar with her because of, apart from The Help. She does mention The Help. It's more about the stage acting and how she got into the acting and things like that. But yeah, I thought this was very eye-opening, very, very honest. Like there's so much stuff in there that is hard and must have been really, really hard to relive. Something else that felt strange to me, but I'm not Viola Davis, was how much forgiveness she was able to give to people who have put her through some of the worst experiences I think I've ever read about, and still come at them with love and still include a little photo of them and say about how wonderful they are with their grandkids and things like that when they've treated her abysmally. So yeah, forgiveness is a big theme in there as well, like family. But yeah, the poverty stuff in there I found really, really hard to, really hard to read. And also as well as the sexual assault stuff. Told you it was a cheery month for reading, didn't I? Lots and lots of stuff going on. Next up was Jane is Trying by Issy Sooty. The very same community library that I'm going to take these along to is where I got this from, so I will be taking this back. This is one that I'd been on my radar for a little bit, and I thought, oh, if I ever see that in the library, or maybe I'll pick it up. Issy Sooty is a comedian and actor in the UK. Most famous probably for playing Dobby in Peep Show, and she also hosts the Penguin podcast, which I listen to sort of on and off. But I'd heard the sort of press run that she'd done for this. She'd been on a few of the podcasts that I listened to, and when she was talking about the book I was thinking, oh yeah, that might be interesting. It's about motherhood and having a baby, which aren't usually things that appeal to me because am not a mother and I don't plan on having any babies. But yeah, this was about her breaking up with her partner after finding out that her partner had cheated on her, and then moving back home with her mum and dad, and then what that's like to do as an adult and to fit back into a community that you've left, a small community. It's a small town or village even, and then finding out a big life-changing thing has happened to you, and then what you're going to do about that. So yeah, I didn't find it as funny as I thought I would, because I actually find Issy Sooty very funny, but I didn't find it as funny as I thought I would. But I enjoyed it. It was very, very readable. Like, I started reading this on the way back from the library, on the way back from the community library, and I'd read like 50 pages by the time I got back, and then I just couldn't really put it down. Not in a like, oh, I need to know what happens way, just in a, it was really, I was going to say gentle, but then I've just said I don't like gentle books, but like really like slipping on a nice pair of old slippers and having a good old read with it. So there we go. Next up was another audiobook called Lowborn by Kerry Hudson. This was a reread for me. You might have known that I've abandoned Audible. Well, I'm doing a soft launch of abandoning Audible because I feel nervous being like, I haven't got any way to get audiobooks, and if there's a specific audiobook I want, there's no way of me getting that on that day, because now I'm using 2 library apps which I have to put a reservation on. But Lowborn by Kerry Hudson is one that I've been meaning to re-listen to for a long time. I read it a couple of years ago, really, really loved it, and been meaning to re-listen to it, been meaning to come at it in a different media, so wanting to listen to it. And it was on my Borrow Box, which is one of the apps I use. I use Borrow Box and Libby, by the way, for audiobooks, if you're wondering. And yes, this is about Kerry. It's a memoir talking about her and her upbringing. Again, a lot of poverty in here, and again, trigger warnings for sexual assault and abuse and alcohol use and things like that. And it's about her and her mother's sort of journey all over the UK, from Scotland down to Canterbury, where I went to university, and them having to move to different places because Kerry's mum had a new boyfriend, or they'd been chucked out of their old place, or they hoped that this place would be better for them, and Kerry sort of like having to just follow her mum around whilst all of this was happening around her, and their relationship with men and their relationship with alcohol, and Kerry revisiting a lot of these places and going back to the very buildings that she used to live in, and revisiting some memories from those places. And a lot of them are bad, but some of them are good and or hopeful almost, and seeing what those places where she lived in poverty, what they're like for the community and what's being put on for the community and stuff. It's very, very eye-opening. I'll be honest, I found it a little bit more bleak this time than I did last time. I feel like I remember finishing it and thinking it felt hopeful, but it didn't feel as hopeful to me this time round. I don't know if that's because I sort of knew there was parts of it, because there are some shocking parts that I was like sort of waiting for to happen. But yeah, it's very, very interesting. A sort of a first-hand look into what it's like to have like a fraught relationship with a parent, and that relationship also being a relationship with alcohol, and sort of flirting with the care system at all times. But yeah, I would highly, highly recommend. But yeah, bit bleak. She needs to read a happy book, doesn't she? Next up was The Rabbit Hutch by Tess Gunty. I got this out from the library. So I've got a lot of the library books I'm reading at the moment are on people's best books of the year, but I can't necessarily remember whose best book of the year they were. I've just been putting reservations on and picking them up because I've been watching so many. I've still got like 20 best books of the year videos to watch, including like some of my mates videos. So I haven't even watched like Mercedes or Jen's yet, so I'm going to put reservations on for those. So yeah, I've just got books coming in and I'm like, I can't remember who's recommended these. But yeah, I read The Rabbit Hutch by Tess Gunty. As I said, there was another book in this that was going to mention animal cruelty. It is this book. This is a story told about a housing block. I read it as like a block of flats. It's called Le Lapinaire, which is where the name The Rabbit Hutch comes from, and you're following people within that block of flats. I'm going to refer to it as a block of flats. It was never like sort of explicitly said, and their lives and what's going on with their lives and what's going on with their work lives and relationships they've had and things like that. Again, trigger warnings for animal cruelty, sexual assault, abuse, drug use, and things like that. I don't think the writing style was for me, if I'm being honest. And like I said, early on I thought, oh, this is sort of marching towards something really bad happening. You find out very early on that a young, and this is, I think you find this out literally on the first page, that a young woman who you are going to look into her life, she loses her life at some point throughout this, or she has her life taken from her, I think is how it's worded. So this was sort of like sitting on my shoulders the whole time I was reading it, along with the fact that there was like constant animal cruelty towards various different animals, and like that was, we'd end a chapter of them saying, oh, and the next time animal cruelty was happening, it was even worse. So like I knew that bad stuff was coming again, but I thought it was fine. But yeah, again, doom and gloom. Guys, tell me a happy book you've read, because I will read a happy book. And then the last one was a 1.5 star, and sadly it was a Patreon book club book. It was Chain Gang All Stars by Nana Kwame Adejei-Brenya. I had such high hopes for this. I mean, I'd been looking forward to reading it all year, and then for Patreon book club, the last couple of years we've read like a new release from the year before. So the theme for January's was 2023 releases, and I was thinking, I'll put this off and I'll read this in January and I'll really look forward to it. And I was thinking, because what we did last year, we read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow last year for our 2022 release in January 2023, and we all loved it. It was one of my favourite books of the year. Keep thinking about it, recommend it to everyone, and I was fully expecting this to be the same. It was not. I thought it was badly written, guys. So if I tell you the sort of premise of it, is that amongst other characters, again, lots and lots of characters, and hard to follow those characters, there was, so two characters we're following mainly, and they are both in prison, and there's become this sort of like reality TV series where prisoners are pitted against one another in sort of like battles to the death, and there's a lot of sort of like sponsorship from corporations, and it's like highlighting the injustices of the prison system, as well as like how gross reality TV can be. And yeah, we're following these two women who are lovers, and also in the same sort of like group of fighters. So there's a lot of violence in here, lots of violence, and I find violence and action like action sequences, to be, if I'm being honest, quite difficult to follow. So a lot of the time I wasn't sure what was going on, and I don't think that was just me. Like when we were talking about it, well, I know it wasn't just me, when we were talking about this in Patreon book club, even the people who said they'd like it, because there was some people that really liked this, said that they had to read the last few paragraphs a number of times in order to ascertain what had happened. And that is a major plot point. Like what is happening at the end is something that's been building up to all the book, and like it's almost like you think it will be a hold the breath moment, but it was a bit more of a moment for me. I don't like the way it was written. There was some chapters that are written in third person, some chapters are written in first person, some chapters are just like, yeah, just really hard to read, because there's people in here who've got issues with mental health, and those chapters were really difficult to read, and not in a way where I feel like I'm being disrespectful in like, oh, I didn't really understand what they were going on about. Like it was just hard to read. Like it was just, the words on the page just weren't making sense to me, not just in terms of the people that were having bad mental health episodes. Like the plot wasn't following for me. It's peppered throughout, and this is something that I did think was done well. I do think it was important, is what I should say. It's peppered throughout with little footnotes. I'm not a big fan of footnotes, however I am listening to the audiobook of Babel at the moment, which you'll know was one of my favourite books from last year, and that seems to do footnotes well. A couple of the books I've read this month have had footnotes, and they really pull me out of the story. These footnotes have, so although this is a fiction story, the footnotes are hard facts about people who are incarcerated at the moment, who have lost their lives, and statistics and policies and stuff like that around the US justice system, of which I'm not overly familiar with. But yeah, it would sort of pull me out, and they were often, it would pull me out of the story. And I know, I guess that was part of the idea, was that it would pull you out of the story and be like, oh, well, you think this, what you read in fiction's bad, listen to what's happening in real life. But yeah, they all just felt badly placed. I just really didn't get on with it at all. So yeah, that was bad for me. Did not enjoy at all. So those were, and imagine, those were the 9 books I read, and I DNF'd 2 books. So yeah, it really hasn't been that good a reading month for me. So the first book I DNF'd was one that I was listening to, but I've got the proof copy here. This is Emma Donohue's Learned by Heart. you won't really be able to see that, but this proof copy is absolutely gorgeous, by the way. So Emma Donoghue, I think I have a really on-off relationship with. Some of her stuff I've absolutely loved. Room, for example, The Pull of the Stars, one of my favourite books during lockdown. But some stuff I've been like, I just have not got on with this and given up on it, and this is one of those. Like I said, I was listening to it on audio, and it is telling the story of a real life person, Anne Lister, and it's set in 1805 at a boarding school. And you're hearing about Anne Lister's journey there from the perspective of Eliza Raine, who is the orphan daughter of an Indian mother. And she, I know from having looked at a non-fiction book about Anne Lister also. Gentleman Jack was the, I'm sure, yeah, Gentleman Jack is the nickname that Anne Lister became known by. I haven't got as far with that yet, but there was a TV series which had that very good actor, Saran Jones, in, and I know that the relationship she had in there, so I know that this is going to evolve to, this would have evolved to a lesbian relationship. But yeah, I just found it really hard to follow. I think, oh, maybe I am getting on with this. But the truth is that I found it really boring. so I was just like, no, it's just not for me. So yeah, I gave up on it. Did not like, got quite far with it as well. I think it was something like 8 hours long, and I'd listened to like 5 hours, but I just wasn't willing to give another 3 hours to it. And then the last book I DNF'd was one from the library, someone's favourite book. I don't know whose favourite book. It was Pines by Blake Crouch, which is the beginning of a series. And this was following a federal agent who had woken up after a car accident in a hospital in a rural place where he's not quite sure what his name is or any of this sort of stuff or why he's there, and he gets out of hospital and has a wander around and sort of like a few things come to him and stuff like that. But yeah, it felt very pedestrian, the writing, it felt daft, and I got less than 100 pages in and I was just like, I'm just chuckling away to this because I feel like this is bad, like cheesy, but also just like really, it wasn't show not tell, it was tell all through dialogue. And also there was a few moments, and I give up on books quite quickly when this happens, where the main character was like, yeah, she was really pretty, shame she's a bit on the heavy side, and I was just like, ugh. And that happened a few times, like mentions of people's weight, and I just thought nah. So there we go. 11 books. Out of all of them, my favourite was So Late in the Day. But yeah, not a great reading month for me. But hey, we go onwards. So we will be here again at the end of February, and I'll be saying, oh yeah, some of the books I read for people's best books of the year were absolutely brilliant. I'm actually reading a book at the moment that I'm rereading Babel at the moment, which I'm loving. But I'm reading Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies or something like that, and I'm just having a lovely time with that. So it's looking up already, guys. Let me know what you've read in the month of January. Let me know if your reading has been as poo-poo as mine. And I'll see you all again soon for another BookTube video. Goodbye!